Welcome to Hashtag Tablespoon Tuesday, where we take a deeper dive into what was on the blog this week. And for those of you who read it, which I'm sure all of you did, but we talked about the messiness of mending and what that looks like. And we learned something really cool called kintsugi, which it means the art of golden joinery. So, in Japanese culture, when a piece of pottery breaks, what they do is they don't throw it away. They don't just chuck it. They believe that putting the pieces back together and joining the broken pieces with gold not only strengthens it, but it makes it more beautiful because there is strength that's found in the broken places. And I really took to this idea because to me, it's a tangible representation of a beautiful scar. And so I obviously, with the Beautiful Scar Project, we are all about finding ways to mend and finding ways to cultivate our beautiful scars. So kintsugi really sat well with me, and so we kind of explored that a little bit. We talked about the messiness of mending and how mending is a very messy process. And so there's a couple things that I kind of wanted to take a deeper dive into this week and when talking about mending. And the first is that mending is not forgetting. Okay, two very different things. Mending is not forgetting. Number two, mending is an ever evolving, ongoing process. And then lastly, mending is necessary. It is a necessary component of moving forward and shifting from just surviving to thriving. So these are the three things I really want to take a deep dive into. So the first is mending is not forgetting. We are putting our pieces back together. So the thing I talked about in the blog post was the shattered mirror. So when you have a shattered mirror, you've dropped a mirror on the ground, all of the shards have broken. They can either break out of the frame, they can break within the frame, what have you. It will never be the same. It'll never look the same. There will always be a new perspective. So when you look into the mirror, your perception, your reflection, it looks completely different. So even if you are able to collect all the shards, every single teeny tiny little piece, and put it back together, you will always see the cracks. And the cracks are your beautiful scars. And so that's something that I want us to really think about. The other piece is that people outside this horrible club, this dumb club that we're all in, who have lost babies, no one asked to be a part of this stupid club. People outside of this club look at not forgetting, but they want to see a recognizable view of you, of the person they know, the person they love. And they just want you back to normal. And the problem is they don't understand that you have a new normal. New normal is a term that I hated, you guys. I hated it for so long. And, but it's true. You have a new normal. You will never look at things the same. You will never react to things the same. You will never go back to who you were before because you have this line in the sand, right? Of who you were before and who you are now. And cultivating your new normal is part of mending, and part of mending is cultivating your beautiful scars. And so, we talked about with scars that with a scar, it comes because there's been a wound. So whether it's emotional or physical, you have a wound. And it's how you care for your wound, that's how it scars. So you either ignore it and you pretend it's not there, and it gets worse, it gets infected, it can cause up to death, or you nurture your wound, you care for your wound, you do all the things you know you're supposed to do, and push through the hard, and you're still going to end up with a scar. Like, it's still going to scar, but it's going to be a beautiful scar and one that you are proud to show and show off. So people outside of our club, they don't get that, and they just want you back to normal. And so for them, they want to forget that this has occurred to you because they need you to go back to who you were. But mending, that's not forgetting. we're never going to forget. We love these babies. Grief is the price we pay for love, right? We talk about this all the time. So we're going to love these babies forever. We're going to grieve these babies forever. Our grief just ends up looking different as our journey progresses. That's number one. Okay. Number two, mending is an ongoing, ever evolving process. So the first thing I did when I started at a support group, I was about 6 weeks out from the loss of Caleb. Caleb was my fourth baby that I had lost. But Caleb, I had lost at full term, and I was cared for a lot differently by the hospital, by society, and I found out that there's help out there. And I had no idea. So I started going to a support group, and the very first thing I asked when it became my turn to talk, after I told my story, was, how long is this going to last? How long is this feeling? How long is this grief? How long is all of this? How long is this going to last? Is this a 6-month thing? Is this a 12-month thing? Is this a 2-year thing? Is this, I mean, heaven forbid, is this a 5-year thing? Like, how long is this going to last? And I'll never forget the look on my leader's face, because it was this knowing look. It was this look of, oh, sweetie, it doesn't go away. And I was shocked. The thought of a timeline is a myth. There are people who will say to you, like, I'm going to grieve with you for 1 year, and then I'm going to stop grieving. That's great. That's great that they have that choice. The grievers, the grief warriors, we don't get that choice. Grief is something that lasts forever, right? Because grief is the price of love, and we love our babies. We will love them forever, so we'll grieve them forever. Our grief just changes. It doesn't stay the same. And mending is, it looks different in every season. So when you are in your raw grief, when this is brand spanking new, this has just occurred, this is you're 1 year in, you're 2 years in, you're 4 weeks in, whatever it is, that mending is going to look a lot different than when you're 5 years out, when you're 10 years out, when you're 20 years out. It looks different. You're still mending, right? Like, it's something you're going to do forever, because it takes a really long time to put your pieces back together. You might have to go chase after a piece that you're like, oh, that guy got away. I gotta go get him back. But it looks very different. And then what works now, so as you're doing your grief work and as you're going along your journey, you start to learn things that help you. You start to learn things that help with your mending, but it may not be a forever type of deal. It might be a seasonal thing. It might be something that works in this season of your life, but it's not something that carries through the next season of your life. So mending it's ever evolving, and you have to give yourself grace in the fact that it's going to look one way, and then it could potentially look a different way, and maybe you'll get into another season and you need to go back and do the first way again, but it's ever evolving. So give yourself some grace. Because it is something that it's not going to look the same in every season. Okay, so number three, mending is necessary for moving forward, especially when you're moving from survival mode to thriving mode. So I want to break this down a little bit. So moving forward. The thought of moving forward sounds scary to me, because it makes me feel like I am being made to leave my babes in the past, and that's not what we're talking about. So there's moving on, right? And then there's moving forward. So a lot of people would say, when are you going to move on? Like, you're just holding on to this grief. Like, when are you going to move on? And I found that really offensive, because I was just like, what do you mean moving on? Like, this is a part of who I am now. Like, this is kind of baked into my DNA now. This is my line in the sand. This is who I was before. This is who I am now. Like, what do you mean moving on? And my brother-in-law, after a particularly rough day, I was spending time with my family, and my brother-in-law was there. And I was talking about the fact that I'm so tired of people feeling like I need to move on and I'm stuck and what have you. And he looked at me and he said, Kim, it's not about moving on. You're never going to move on. It's about moving forward. it's forward. And I really took to that because the thing I've learned about grief is the only way through grief is through. The only way through is through. So you can pretend it's not there. You can set it on the shelf. It will wait for you. It'll come back in the most inopportune times. It will show up. But grief's not going anywhere. And so I think a lot of the times when it comes to people wanting you to move on, it's they want to see a recognizable version of you again. They want to see the person that they know, that they love, that they can expect. Like, you're not meeting their expectations. And guess what? You don't have to. You don't have to. That's not a requirement. That's not a thing. The other piece of it is I took it as a lot of times people will be like, well, are you going to try again? When are you going to try again? Are you going to try to have another baby? They would try to force me into this conversation because they thought that if I were to have another baby, then I could move on. That conjures up a replacement image for me, and I get really fired up about that because there is no replacement. We know this, right? There's no replacement. There's no replacement for that baby that you love. And people outside this stupid club, they don't get it. They don't understand that there is no replacement. There's never going to be a replacement. And so that's another reason I would get upset when people would tell me to move on. So with moving forward, it's like when you go into survival mode, it's like going into safe mode as a computer, right? Like, only the most very basic systems are running. And at some point, survival mode can last a long time. And a lot of the things you learn in survival mode can actually just permeate your existence. And even when you start moving into thriving mode, you don't realize that you're taking those survival skills into your thriving mode with you, not realizing that your survival skills don't serve you in the thriving mode. So, a huge example in my life is my husband and I, after the loss of Caleb, we got really good at being very busy all the time, very, very busy. And it was just the two of us. We didn't have any living kids at the time. And we were experts at running the most useless errands I've ever seen, ever. We could pack our days and draw it out and make sure we weren't home until it was time to go to bed. And we did this, no joke, you guys, we did this for 8 years. For 8 years. In real time, because we're at a stay-at-home order here in Colorado, my husband and I looked at each other yesterday and he was like, this is weird. Like, we're supposed to be doing stuff. Like, we're supposed to be, like, running. That survival part of us that we learned after Caleb died, because we didn't want to be at home with his nursery, but we refused to take it down for years. So we always made sure we were busy and out of the house. And then our living kids came along and we run at this breakneck pace. And we have a teenager who's just like, dude, I just want to lay down and take a nap and play video games. Like, why? Why do we have to run all these errands? Why are we always out of the house? Why are we always on the go? And literally, it's not until real time that we realized that survival mode that we were doing, it's come into our thriving mode. And it doesn't serve us anymore. And we have to really figure out, what does that look like? It's okay to be still. It's okay to be quiet. It's okay. And we're still figuring that out in real time. So those are the things I really wanted to touch on with the messiness of mending this week. Is it's not about forgetting. It's not forgetting. We're never going to forget. It's not about replacing. We're never going to replace. It's about shifting our focus. It's about helping us get to a place where we can start thriving again. And mending is messy. Like we talked about, mending is messy, and it's not going to look the same for everybody. It's not going to look, everybody's timeline is going to be completely different. And everybody's mending looks different. So we're going to offer each other grace. We are going to love each other really well. And we're going to remember that we're in this together. So looking forward to talking to you guys again next week. Thanks for joining on #TablespoonTuesday. See you later.